What is happening, Titan Clan? It is your boy, King Tinex here, back with another video. And as you guys can clearly see from the thumbnail, it is going to be part 9 of what if Deku had Esdeath's powers. Like for that Raven, what if? Just hold on. Like it hasn't even been a whole week yet. But basically, when I last ended off this, when I first when I last ended off as Deku, basically he ended up going through the fight. He ended up fighting All for One, and he was hospitalized afterwards. But he did manage to pick up some new skills over this time, though, when preparing to fight All for One. And with these skills, basically, he's able to create an army of ice soldiers. So he's already got numbers on his side now. Now, when it comes on to his suspension, it's basically similar to in canon, except, well, he never fought Bakugo here. As a matter of fact, because of this, um, Bakugo, he is actually here when they end up having to fight Mirio. Something interesting I should say here is that Mirio does have one for all. Reason being because he was going to be All Might's first choice, anyways. He was originally going to give it to Mirio. Obviously, Mirio is very strong here. As a matter of fact, I would say that he is probably able to use like maybe 50% or higher of one for all at the very least. Obviously, Deku is not that strong. He's not strong enough to really go toe to toe with someone like Mirio. The only reason he was able to really fight All for One was because All Might was with him, basically backing him up. He served as more of a distraction, honestly. But something interesting though about Deku is that he does have the ability to, create ice soldiers and freeze time. That's something that he did end up using to his advantage throughout the fight. Obviously, you guys will already know that things still wouldn't look too good for Deku. These would basically just be parlor tricks for the most part, except for the fact that he could, that he could freeze time. So he would probably end up using that. He would use his time freezing abilities in order to get the one up on Muriel. Basically, whenever time is frozen, he would use one of his weapons in order to land a good hit on Muriel. He couldn't just use this rapidly, and he could only ever use it for like a couple seconds at a time. So he made sure that whenever he used that time stop ability, that time freezing ability of his, it was going to be worth it. He ended up, man, this guy went for the low blow. Honestly, he created a he created a gauntlet made of ice at one point and ended up punching Mirio in the gut. He punched Mirio a bit lower as well, if you get my gist. And when time goes back, obviously Mirio grunts in pain from the punch. And Bakugo also taps in at one point, a couple of times actually. What happens with Bakugo is because of the fact that he does have explosions in both his arms and feet, he is able to also serve as a sort of distraction. He's able to actually keep up with Mirio and Deku's. He's able to basically keep his head out. Keep his head out. He's basically able to sort of tag team with Zuku here, and they're able to actually bombard Mirio with the tag side. He's mainly able to phase phase out of, but at the same time, Deku ends up using that time stop ability, that time freezing ability, to still get the one up on Mirio. Mirio Mirio still just knocks him out at the very end, but he does compliment them. He does admit that, hey, you guys are pretty strong. I'm honestly impressed. I wasn't expecting for first years to actually get that many blows on me. And he is even more interested in Izuku simply because of the fact that Izuku just seemed to have fought all for one, as well as being able to get the most blows on him, as far as he knows, anyways. Because, well, how should I say it? He did not know about Deku's time freezing ability, that's all. He didn't know that Deku had that ability. And, of course, he didn't know about Deku's ice soldiers. He ended up missing that part of the fight. He. Alright, so basically, Muriel just didn't see the part where Deku ended up using his ice soldiers. It did cut out after obviously. The fight wasn't broadcasted for too long. It didn't last too long, and at the same time, when it came on to their fight, Deku didn't use the ice soldiers against him because of his fear that he would overdo it, that he would overuse his ice quirk. When it came onto the hero license exam, that is when things get interesting because Deku will not hold back here, or unlike what he did with Muriel, because he knew that, well, it was just like some sort of sparring match just to see what they were fully capable of, and in order to really get them into the spirit for the hero licensing exam. Deku isn't pulling anything. Oh my goodness, that's a terrible expression. And Deku isn't holding back at all here. He uses his ice soldiers, he uses his ice constructs, he uses his time freezing ability as well. At the very beginning, as soon as these people trying to barrage UA students, he realizes this and freezes time and just shoots all of the balls out of their way by creating these ice shards. These ice shards, all of them, these ice spikes, all of them just going towards these balls, all of these balls, all of these spheres. Yeah, I prefer saying spheres. He ends up using these spheres. He ends up using these spikes to shoot through the spheres and actually go right back at the person who threw them. Everybody who saw this was shocked. They weren't expecting this, especially from a UA student. They only saw so much of what a UA student could do. They didn't know like the full extent. They only saw what they had done at the sports festival. They didn't know that Deku was that quick. At least what they thought. Anyways, they didn't know about Deku's time freezing ability. It's almost as if it was instantaneous. That's what was really catching everybody off guard when it came onto everything afterwards. Simply put, Deku, I'm not even going to hold you guys to it. He's just able to pass right off the bat. He's able to actually find somebody, find a couple targets. He's actually able to throw these spheres at them, hit the targets on the person's body, and he's able to pass that first part of the exam. The second part of the exam is interesting since it has to deal with rescuing people. He is able to actually do fairly well here, especially with how useful his ice quirk is, and he's able to make constructs and to help people, which helps him to keep more points here than in Canyon. Although he's starting to reach his limit, he can feel his body starting to tense up, if that's even the right word, anyways. When it comes on to that, Deku starts to worry, especially when he sees Shota and one dude, this one interesting dude from earlier. He thinks his name is Anasa. They are basically duking it out for whatever reason, trying to fight Gang Orca. He doesn't understand this at all, but he tries to put an end to it as quickly as possible. He actually ends up approaching them and wraps his arm around Shota, basically grabbing her by the neck and just yanks her down to the floor with himself down there as well, telling her to calm down. Do not trying to really fight Gang Orca here. Only focus on the citizens. He will handle Gang Orca. He knows how strong Gang Orca is. You shouldn't be trying to fight Gang Orca. And then he sees, well, Bakugo try and do the same thing. He tries to stop Bakugo, but he just can't. Um, look, like at the very end, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. There is no chance of Deku being able to really fight Gang Orca here. Every single ice construct Deku makes, everything regarding ice, Gang Orca just destroys using his whale voice. Well, Gang Orca is a whale, but basically using that supersonic whale of his, which is able to just break the ice due to just how strong and immense it is. It's like Jiro's Quake, but on steroids at this point. Even afterwards, Deku still tries to fight off Gang Orca, or at least try and stall for Anasa and Shota. Anasa realizes what Deku is doing, and he realizes, oh snap, this is actually kind of foolish. Of course, by the end, though, of course, though, it's too late. It is just too late for them because they cannot gain points back. They need to keep as many points as possible. That's not one of those tests where you can regain points, where you can gain points. No, no. You only lose points. And they already lost a lot of points just by trying to fight Gang Orca. Deku, Deku was actually able to rescue a good amount of citizens. He was actually able to even he was able to actually create like a blockade, like a sort of wall, in order to actually save the citizens, save save the people that needed to be rescued. He was actually able to protect them with his ice, even if it got broken down. He continued to make new forms of ice just for these people, and it's actually really, really pushing him. He can really feel his body starting to break down, and like his sense of reasoning starting to go out the window. He's starting to go a bit crazy with this euphoria feeling. Like he's not listening to his bodily functions anymore. That's the scariest part about his quirk. Obviously, though, thankfully, though, what am I saying? Obviously, for thankfully, though, thankfully, the time does run out, and Deku is actually able to keep a good enough amount of points to actually pass the exam. Of course, Deku was happy, but Shota and Anasa and Bakugo are kind of upset. Reason being because they did not pass the exam, and they will have to retake the exam. So that means that those people are out for the next arc. You guys already know which arc we are going into. This is the one I'm going to try and do good, okay? Alright, so look. Basically when it came onto like the overhaul arc, the first part is obviously just trying to find a hero to intern under. Muriel actually goes to Deku here and offers Deku to work with him in the. Let me try and rephrase that. Basically, Muriel walks to Deku one day and says, "Hey, um, do you know Night Eye?" Deku actually nods and says, "Yeah, I heard about him. He used to be my sidekick, if I'm not mistaken." Muriel nods and says, "Like, yeah, yeah, he used to be All Might's sidekick, and he's a really professional hero. He's incredibly strict, but he was able to get me to where I'm at now. He is incredibly talented in teaching people how to use their quirks. He is really knowledgeable. He he could probably help you to better your quirk and even give you a good amount of experience if you're interested." Obviously, Deku accepts and they end up going to Night Ice Agency only to see Bubble Girl strapped them to some weird device. I'm not gonna use that joke, but yeah. Yeah, that's where things get interesting because Deku already has the worst impressions of Night Eye. Is he like a sadist or something? um, look, when Night Eye does see Deku, he just pushes his glasses up and just has his arms behind his back like this is casual. Like nothing is out of the ordinary, which just unnerves Deku even more here. It's like you see nothing wrong with what's going on here. Even when he looks over to Mirio, he sees the boy just smiling, and he just takes a couple steps backwards. Um, that's when I does actually and tell Deku to come over and asks him why he wants to intern under him. Deku explains that, well, he has a decently strong quirk, but the problem with his quirk is his drawback, and the drawback being the euphoria and the frostbite. He will begin to neglect his own body. He will start to neglect his own body, telling him to stop fighting, stop using his quirk, basically ignoring all other red signs of of the overusage of his quirk because of that euphoria feeling. He wants to intern under Night Eye in hopes that he'll be able to get over this and be able to really listen to his body more. Not only that, but to be able to still help people while trying to get over this euphoria. Even when he's feeling this euphoria, he won't neglect his body as much and instead be able to focus his attention still on the people, not get distracted with this euphoria feeling. Don't lose track of the goal in mind. Night Eye nods and is like, okay, okay, um, fight me. And Deku is like, what? Fight you? Night Eye nods and is like, yeah, fight me. Like, if you want to, if you want to intern under me, you're going to have to fight me. You're going to have to get this stamp out of my hand and stamp this and and stamp this paper. I really had to think for a second. Obviously, Deku is kind of like, what? But he still goes for it anyways. He he still tries to find he still tries to fight Night Eye. It's just that he isn't bouncing all along the walls like how he would in canon. Instead, he actually ends up making some ice ice cavalry. Obviously, Night Eye is shocked to see this. He's like, wait, huh? This kid can create moving ice constructs that are the size of the average human and seems to have the strength of a human as well, along with seemingly high durability. All of this just amazes Night Eye. And Deku actually does freeze time as well during that. He's actually able to freeze time while Night Eye is distracted and just grabs the stamp out of Night Eye's hand during a couple of seconds that he does have, and he just runs. He runs. Night Eye realizes, oh snap! This kid somehow got the stamp. He tries to reach over to Deku, but Deku has his Iceman, his Ice Cavalry, his Ice Soldiers, whatever you guys want to call it. He has them grab Night Eye's arms and pin them to the back of him. Let me rephrase that. Basically, they just pin his arms to his back. And Deku goes over to Night Eye's desk and stamps a paper, officially approving himself of being part of Night Eye's agency as an intern. Night Eye accepts that, well, Deku has proven his worth, and a promise is a promise after all. Obviously, though, he is a bit annoyed at how easily Deku was able to get the jump on him. I would say that next, though, is what gets interesting because the next point is where they find Eri. I was about to say Eerie. I would say that the interactions go pretty similar to in canon. Only thing here is, your boy Deku, he ain't going to have any patience with Chisaki. You think he's actually going to allow another person to die here because of that whole fiasco with Stain, because he wasn't there to help Ida. He sees this little girl wrapped in bandages and this strange man wearing a plague mask. He thinks about it for a second and is like, "Yeah, no, I'm not giving her back to you. Absolutely not. Even when, even when Chisaki offers them to come around the alley, go closer into the alley, that goes like you just feel some very bad vibes from Chisaki and says no. Chisaki decides, you know what, no more Mr. Nice Guy, I guess, and he just and takes off one of his gloves. Eri tries to wriggle out of Deku's grasp. Deku's grasp, and Deku realizes this and holds her even closer to him. He refuses to let Eri go. He sees a bit of Ida in her. Even though they weren't the best of friends, he still cared for Ida to an extent. And obviously, seeing this little girl, he doesn't want to let another life be lost here. He developed these powers. He developed this new arsenal of abilities because of Ida's death, and he realizes that this seems to be like a sort of redemption for him here. He's not going to falter. He actually uses his ice in order to actually freeze Chisaki's arm. Mirio immediately panics and is like, "What the heck are you doing?" Deku just looks at Deku just looks at Mirio and is like, "I'm doing what I should have done for Ida. I should have been there for Ida. I should have protected him. I'm going to do this for this little girl though. I'm going to protect her from this evil man. You see these bandages on her, don't you?" Um Mirio is immediately silenced by that though. And it's like, "Alright, go ahead. We're just gonna have to we're going to have to report this to Night Eye though." They run and they actually freeze what you call it? They freeze Chisaki's arms and legs and call the police and explain the whole situation. Even though they don't have like a whole bunch of evidence, s- there is still like some sort of evidence to suggest, well, there seems to be some sort of child abuse here. Obviously, we do not mess with child abusers. So even even though there isn't like a sort of like a whole bunch of concrete evidence, there's still evidence to suggest that Eri has been abused by Chisaki, and he is arrested by the police because of that. They end up putting those anti-quick handcuffs on him. These handcuffs basically disable Chisaki's quick, which causes him to be unable to escape. Chisaki is annoyed, obviously, but he would get his revenge. He plans on getting his revenge against Deku and Mirio. When Deku and Mirio inform Night Eye of the whole situation, Night Eye is upset because Deku was acting quite brash. He didn't really respect that, and he actually ends up thinking about canceling Deku's internship. Instead of canceling it though, he says he ends up giving Deku a warning. He says, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to let you off the hook this time. Yeah, I'm going to let you off the hook this time around. But if you mess up again, if you screw up again, if you just jump into a situation like that again, I'm going to cancel this whole internship. You got me?" Deku nods and is like, "Yeah, I understand." Of course, Deku doesn't regret his decision at all. He he doesn't look. He does not regret anything. He doesn't regret anything that he's done here. He is rather glad that he did it. And when they end up looking at Aries' scars, when they actually end up interrogating Eri, trying to figure out what her life has been like, basically trying to figure out who is Eri, they end up finding out that she is undocumented, and they start putting some clues together. They realize that she actually has some ties to the original Yakuza boss, who is in a coma. so she is put into an orphanage. But at the same time, though, due to the instability of her quake, she is quickly taken out of the orphanage and placed into Yui's care for right now. Basically, basically, this all out Chisaki's plans have gone to ruins here, and he has, well, his men try to basically break him out of prison. Another thing that happens here is, mm, well, your boy Shigaraki, he he ends up approaching the Yakuza as well. The Yakuza actually approach him first here, and with Twice obviously helping still. But basically, what they say here is, "Hey, look, our boss Chisaki, he's in prison right now, so we basically want your help to bust him out of there." And look, Shigaraki just nods and is like, "Okay, what's in it for me?" Uh, they they start to get to talking, and they mention Quake erasing bullets. They will give him access to that if they actually help rescue Chisaki. Of course, he's all ears when they mention Quake erasing bullets, just because of uh, the instability that it would give um Quirk Society, Hero Society, if they were to actually use that to full effect. And to one side, they seem to be using on the streets were only temporary ones, but at the same time, that seemed to cause mass hysteria. At least that's what he was getting from the underworld. You think your boy Shigaraki would miss out on such an opportunity? Of course not. They end up breaking Chisaki out of prison. They're able to do this rather well. And what happens next is, the pretty obvious things. They're actually trying to kidnap Eri. They try and find Eri, but they just can't. This is what annoys Chisaki because his plans wouldn't be able to work without the key person to the operation being Eri. And it's like a whole stage mission happening. When you do find her, though, Chisaki is actually the one to find her, but she is in the hands of Yue. He actually he actually recruits all of his men, and they end up breaking into Yue. Not only just Chisaki, but Shigaraki is there as well. I remember I remember some people commenting in the last fight that, well, didn't Shigaraki lose an arm back at the USJ? And I think you guys are right. I think I did mention that Shigaraki does have one arm here. Because what happened back at the USJ. He basically also has a robotic arm, which, of course, isn't able to use his quirk, unfortunately. So he's at a disadvantage, but I would say that no, I forget it. No, he's at a disadvantage here, no matter what. He still trains though. I would say that because of the fact that he is at a disadvantage, because of the fact that he only has one arm that can use his quirk now, he would actually develop his quirk further and unlock, well, his infectious part of it. The sort of, yeah, I'm going to just say infectious part of his quirk. Basically, the part of his quirk that spreads the decay to other sources, regardless of if he touched it or not. Basically, if somebody were to get into like close proximity of of something that is being decayed. If say say like their pinky toe and just accidentally touches it, boom, that person is going to die now. Because that decay is just going to keep on spreading throughout the rest of their body, even if Shigaraki may not have touched them directly. Too bad. We gotta give Shigaraki a boost in power here at the very least. That's what makes Shigaraki a threat here as well. These guys are basically going at it. When it comes on to the whole staff, they're basically trying to fight off Overhaul's army. They're trying to fight off the Yakuza. They're trying to fight off the League of Villains. They're trying to fight Chisaki. They're trying to fight Shigaraki. They're trying to fight all of these guys. But these guys got some major powers. These guys these guys are not to be trifled with. These guys are strong, incredibly strong, honestly. Very strong to the point where I would say that it's just ridiculous. I would say I would say that, well, All Might is out of commission. He just isn't strong enough anymore. He is in retirement. What ends up happening instead here is it's like a whole out war. All of the Yakuza are out. All of the League of Villains are out. Even Gigantomachia is here. Even the Nomu are here. I would say they even bring in a high-end Nomu in order to get Eri. Obviously, everything is just going crazy. Deku, he isn't the strongest here. He knows he isn't the strongest, but he sure does try. He puts his whole heart into it. He basically goes ballistic. He brings out his sadistic tendencies out. He creates an ice sword, goes slashing down on some of the members of the Yakuza. He goes down and creates ice shards, blasting them into the kneecaps of some of these Yakuza members. He even goes in on some of the League of Villain members. He isn't afraid to fight them. Oh, who am I kidding? He is very afraid right now. He is afraid to die. He knows that these guys are just like a step up. These guys are a step up above what he's used to. He isn't used to just fighting these sort of people. He realizes that he's way out of his ball game. These guys are supposed to be way out of his league right now, but he is still willing to fight. He is still willing to fight for Eri. He is still willing to fight for the people who need to be saved. He has some sadistic tendencies, but he's still going to fight. He ends up using some ice shards in order to actually stab some of the Yakuza members in the eyes, making them blind. In return, he even uses his time freezing ability in order to gain more of an advantage. He uses his ice cavalry to also even out the playing field in order to basically get rid of more of the villains at a quicker pace. He's basically able to use his ice cavalry as a form of support for the heroes. This is basically just giving the heroes some extra arsenal at this point. They're all going at it, and and, and here's the thing, um, Chisaki is just so frustrated here. He is so frustrated. He starts even starts to scratch himself, and when he realizes this, he stops and looks over to Shigaraki. He realizes that, oh heck no. No, 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 no. I refuse to have any association with this man. But when he realizes that things are not going in his favor at all, he's like, screw it. Forget it. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of fighting these people. And he ends up fusing with with Shigaraki. Not only that, but he ends up fusing with that big dude from earlier. that big dude in the anime and manga that's seemingly able to absorb like life energy or something along those lines. Get I don't understand this quirk, to be honest. But he ends up fusing with those two and creates this giant monstrosity, this giant chimera, and he's able to use Chisaki's quirk and Shigaraki's quirk. But there are like two powerful minds here, basically being Chisaki and Shigaraki. They're basically using their quirks in tandem with each other, which is incredibly dangerous. The reason for this being dangerous is, well, this guy can literally cause you to explode just by touching you, and you will begin to decay at the same rate. First you first you begin to decay, and then you will explode. He's able to do it to the ground as well. He's basically able to cover a wider surface area than before. Deku realizes that, okay, he just nods and is like, okay, I'm screwed. Like, he's really starting to consider how are they going to, well, fight. How is he going to manage against these guys? And then he looks over to Bakugo. He looks over to Mirio, who is fighting his hardest in order to protect Eri. And he's using these wind cannons, he's using his phasing abilities, he's using everything in his arsenal. All of a sudden, this guy starts bringing out even more powers as well. He's like, okay. Mirio actually looks over to Deku here and tells him to eat this. He literally rips out a piece. No, I wouldn't say. He basically takes a piece of his hair and force feeds it into Deku. Deku Deku just automatically swallows it, like in reflex for whatever reason. Although he cringes at it. He cringes at the taste of Mirio's hair, but due to like the rush, what ends up happening is that Deku does end up unlocking one for all here. Yes, Deku does get one for all. Okay, I bet you guys are happy because there's absolutely no way Deku could defeat this monstrosity without it. What ends up happening here is that Deku now has a major boost in his abilities. He has a major boost in his cryokinetic abilities. He's able to create way more ice soldiers than before. And not only that, but these guys are basically titans now. Come on. Yes, I had to say it. He creates ice titans. He's able to create like a large arsenal of weapons now. He's even able to create like a whole giant armor for himself that does move. And he's able to go and fight the Chisaki overhaul fusion. On top of that, even though like they are using their quirk still, like this is slowly affecting Deku's Iceman. It's affecting his ice armor. He's actually really thankful for the fact that he does have this armor around him, this ice coating, because he realizes that he would have probably been screwed without it. And he's constantly generating new ice to cover the ice that is being decayed. He ends up stabbing. Yes, he ends up stabbing the Chisaki overhaul Shigaraki fusion. eh, he ends up stabbing them in the chest. the ice sword is actually gigantic as well. Come on, we going big and bombastic here. Obviously, what ends up happening is that yeah, he stabs him in the chest, but they just immediately reform themselves, and it's like yeah, guess again, boy. And Deku ends up charging up one for all into his arms, and then charges it up even further, using it for his ice abilities, and ends up using his time freezing ability. This is literally like his most OP move here, because it's not just a couple seconds anymore. No, this is basically, I would say that he has like a whole 5 minutes of this quirk. Not just quirk. He has a whole he has a full 5 minutes of using his time freezing ability. He freezes time for 5 minutes and is able to, end up slicing down the fusion of Jisaki and Shigaraki. He slices them down and makes sure that their body parts are scattered across the field. He wants to make sure that there is absolutely no way for them to get back from this. There's absolutely no way for Chisaki to use overhaul on them and or on their body parts in order to reform. Um, Deku Deku obviously knows that yeah, we cannot afford to let we can't afford for this man to live at this point. It's just impossible for us to let him live. He's just too strong to let live here. If if we are not careful here, he's just going to reform again and try and fight us again, and I won't have this time freezing power with me again to use, because well, I'm basically using the last of my flames. I'm using the last of my juice here. I'm using everything here. If this doesn't work, we're all screwed. So that's why he makes sure to leave their body parts all scattered across the field. He makes sure that there's no way for them to regenerate. And does when time is unfrozen, Deku immediately collapses. He collapses, he's freezing, his ice just breaks down. Not only that, but he he is immediately admitted into the hospital. No, not immediately, but I would say that look, they immediately try to get Deku some medical attention. They drag him out of the fight. And who drags him out of the fight exactly? Shota. Your girl Shota Todoroki. She drags him out of the fight and leaves him over at the side to recuperate. And she realizes that he is incredibly cold. His body temperature is very, very low. This is a very dangerous low temperature. So she uses her fire to warm Deku up, hopefully, and in hopes that this would actually help Deku. Like, he is still unconscious, but she can hear him utter some words. And she hears him say the words, I love you. I love Shota. I wish I could survive for her to hear these words. I wish I could confess to her. And she immediately blushes. um, um, Eventually, the heroes are able to subdue the rest of the villains, but many casualties. There are many casualties, though. That's the worst part about war. About war, there is going to be a lot of casualties, a lot of lives lost here. A lot of people are dead. But at the end of the day, their heroes did win. They were able to finally get rid of the villains. They were finally able to defeat. They were finally able to defeat the League of Villains, and they were finally able to defeat the Yakuzas as well. They were able to arrest the remaining Yakuzas and League of Villains, and immediately put them into Tartarus. You think they were going to put them in regular prison? Oh heck no, absolutely not. After everything that happened here, they would be out of their minds to just put them in a regular prison. These guys were just ridiculous. And literally, they use everything. They use all of their resources. They lost everything here, and they still fought. They still fought hard and proud. And with that, you think they'll go to regular prison? No, they go to Tartarus. The ones that survived, that is. They don't. They didn't want to make a habit of killing people, but this was one of the rare occasions where they had to. And yeah, in conclusion, the last part of what happens afterwards is that Deku does recover, although he is incredibly trained. He can't use his quake the same way as before. As a matter of fact, Mirio did actually die here. Mirio ended up dying to, well, protect protect the rest of the to protect the rest of the people. He actually ended up saving Deku's life by basically, taking on the burden of trying to defeat the rest of the villains who were around them. Basically, the ones who would trying to get close to Deku, trying and end this boy's life. He wasn't allowing it. He ended up getting severely wounded, but he didn't care. He realized what Deku did, and he thanked Deku. He said that he really was a true hero. He deserved one for all. And when Deku hears the news of Mirio's passing, he does cry. He is sad that Mirio died, especially to save his life. But he, at the very least, is happy that he was able to save one life here. He was able to still protect the life of the little girl. If he could save at least one life, at least make one person happy in this world, then his work was done here. Of course, he does have one for all. He is officially the 10th user of one for all, and we know us manga readers, us elite readers. Uh-huh. Um, we know that Deku has more than just strength enhancement, along with a boost in his quirk usage. He actually has access now to Mirio's quirk and a lot of other quirks, especially quirks like Black Whip and Float. So yeah, I'm going to say that Deku does become the number one hero, especially with all of these new abilities he has now. And he doesn't have to constantly rely on his original quirk. He can use other quirks that are less dangerous in usage. Oh my gosh. It's almost as if I'm losing my voice here. What happens is, with all these new quirks, of course, he doesn't have to rely on using just his euphoria. Not euphoria. He doesn't have to rely on just using his ice. He's able to use all of these different quirks to help him throughout his hero work. And that's how he's able to become the number one hero at an incredibly young age. I would say that he becomes the next number one hero at the age of 20. And considering the vast array of quirks he has in his arsenal. And that's how I'm going to end it off here. Deku ends up getting married to Shonta Todoroki, and they end up having a couple kids who have some traits of. No, nah. As a matter of fact, here's what happens. They do have kids. They have two kids. I'm not going to say names or anything. No, I'm just going to say their quirks. They would have full on fire manipulation and full on ice manipulation. Basically, sort of like their parents, but just stronger. Just more attuned to ice, though. That's something that Shota finds kind of interesting. They seem to take a bit more after their dad, even though they do have like some fire. They have fire traits. They can use fire. It's just that for some reason, this fire doesn't burn, but instead freezes. It's cold fire, not hot fire. And she's okay with it. It's new. It's unique. It's different from her father's own. It's different. It is completely new. This is a separation. This is not her father's quirk. This is not her quirk. This is their kid's quirk. And she is okay with it. And she loves Deku. Deku loves her. They are happy. And Deku was able to save a life back then. And he's seeing that life develop every day, because she ends up being adopted by him when he becomes 20 years old. When he becomes the number one hero, he watches her develop as well. He just watches her develop, all of that. Yeah. Aries is his adopted kid, and technically his oldest as well. And that's how I'm going to end off the what if. Peace, guys. King Titan X out. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, though. And share these videos, guys. Because I'm trying to see if we can reach like 1,000 subs by the end of the year. Let's try and reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year, guys. Come on. Get me to 1,000 subs so that we can be more interactive here. Anyways, King Titan X out.